Dr. Monahan, thank you for being here. I greatly respect you as my physician and appreciate the Office of the Attending Physician serving the members of Congress and staff. I understand your office is relatively autonomous, and I like that. And in fact, I asked you about it one time when I was in visiting, and because I was concerned, how could you give good advice to the House and the Senate, the legislative branch, when you were, as a naval officer, subject to the orders of the Commander-in-Chief? And you explained to me that there was a different chain of command, that you weren't in the chain of command, and that the President couldn't give you orders, that it was the Senate and the House that gave you orders. Can you give me some more information on that? And the reason I ask is, in discussing that, as I joined this committee, several members said, well, that's not our understanding, because we've been told several times on other issues, don't remember what they were, that you were bound by naval guidelines, naval rules and regulations. So can you help me explain that?
Yes, sir. It's a very unique situation. I'm an active duty naval officer. I follow all regulations and customs. I don't appear in uniform for you today, as I run a hybrid office of both military and civilian personnel and appear as the head of a congressional office or agency.
So on medical issues related to the House and the Senate, are you subject to any naval regulations or to commands by the Commander-in-Chief?
No. I work directly for the 4 joint leaders of the bicameral leadership of the legislative branch.
All right, let's talk about that. You testified earlier that you spoke with about the COVID regulations. As time moved on, you spoke with both the majority leader in the Speaker of the House and the minority leader of the House. Is that accurate?
Yes.
About all the changes and what was going on with the guidelines, you spoke with them and took their advice?
Yes, many times in person with them and many times with their staffs.
All right. So, you know, you talked a little bit earlier about your process on all that, but there was a lot of consternation because of the 2 different decisions. Was that a decision that Kevin McCarthy participated in, or was he just consulted or told what was happening? Is that something that basically then Speaker Nancy Pelosi dictated the difference that we have in the House and the Senate?
I spoke with all parties. I listened intently to both the majority leader, I would say the Speaker of the House, and the minority leader. It was impressed upon me that the House operates in a way that has a majority and a minority. And when it comes to the operational-based decision-making, the majority interests prevail.
And so and I'm not fussing at you, I'm just trying to get the facts. So this was Nancy Pelosi's decision to do all that stuff based on your advice?
I gave her advice, and the execution came through the leadership of the House.
That would be Nancy Pelosi. That would be Nancy Pelosi. Okay. So that brings up the question of swearing in 2021. We had a special goofy box up in the gallery.
Oh, there's a plexiglass. The plexiglass
block. It looked like one of those soundproof boxes on a game show. So I'm asking you, was that your advice to do that?
No, I was consulted before the start of the Congress.
And you advised against it, didn't you?
I did. I saw it at the first time you saw it. So I walked in the morning when the floor began, and there it was, the plexiglass assembly at the corner of the gallery.
That's not something you cooked up, and you never certified that as being safe, did you?
Well, I was consulted on a range of things as to how could members come to the House floor when in a quarantine state if that were necessary. At that time, the guidelines for quarantine were just as severe as isolation. So members could be pulled out into isolation just by being within 6 feet for more than 15 minutes of a known positive case. That changed later in the coronavirus to make things better for us. But at that time, at the start of the Congress, there was that issue. So I was asked by the leadership office to say, is there a way someone in a quarantine position, if necessary, could fulfill their constitutional duties and cast their vote on the House floor? The constitutional duty thing held very strongly with the members, and on the first day of the Congress, I was told there was not a proxy kind of system. You had to be there in person to exercise your duties. So at that point, we had to say, is there a contingency way that we could have a way for a person who was COVID test negative at possible risk of disease, but not, in fact, ill, to be present in the House chamber to cast their vote? And I replied, there may be a way to do that if we took advantage of a corner of the room with high flow ventilation, if we took special precaution as to how the person entered the building from the East Front Plaza through a surveyed route. I gave advice like that, but I didn't specify.
And you may or may not be aware of this, and my time is running out, But isn't it true that there were some members who had been exposed and would later have the disease who came into the Capitol without going through any special thing? Now, they may have gone up to the booth, to the goofy booth, but they came into the Capitol and exposed everybody to COVID, and isn't it true that several members of Congress came down with COVID shortly thereafter?
Well, people could develop exposure through any route, through travel and meeting with their
I
families,
understand that,
restaurants, dinners. I couldn't
but yes or
account for how it
no,
got
were
it.
there a lot of people who traveled through who probably should have been excluded or had special means to get in who just came in? Isn't that true?
You could say that about any of the members, sir.
All right. And isn't it true that there was a small majority, and so the Speaker did that because she wanted to make sure she had every vote on the floor?
No one told me anything like that, sir. This was a
Okay.
general
And
discussion as to how
would
could
you
members
have
vote on it.
recommended, if they'd asked you about the special booth, that maybe you have 2 or 3 special booths in the gallery so that you didn't have people exposed to other people who were in the booth?
Yeah, only one person was allowed to be in the booth at one time. I wasn't given any contingencies as to the numbers that would be required.
Did they wipe the booth down in between the person going in the booth?
Yes, the booth was cleansed between people there, and people in the booth had to wear a mask, and they had to be COVID test negative before they came.
And Mr. Chairman, if you'll give me this, because I'm not going to be able to stay for the second round, if you give me just another minute. So when voting was taking place later, just a few days later, we were told we had to go up in the gallery. We couldn't stay on the floor in order to make objections. If we wanted to make an objection to a parliamentary procedure, I was told this, because of the COVID regulations, and yet on the day of the swearing in of the Speaker and the vote on the Speaker, none of that pertained. Isn't that correct?
I don't know precisely that answer, sir. I know there's a difference
Answer is
between
yes,
day
but I
one
understand
and
you may not know it. I have to yield back because my time is up. Thank you so much for being here today. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
The gentleman yields